Okay, so this is part 3 of the extended response, and some parts of this are answered really well and other parts not so much. So we'll just go through it. Now, whenever I have a question like this, the first thing I would do is do my forward scanning and backward scanning and find my critical path, because I probably am going to be asked that. So let's go through and do that first. Okay, so we start at 0 and we add 2 for activity A, add another 1 for activity B, so we've got 3, and then through C, 3 plus 4 gives me 7, and then through F, 3 and 4 gives me 7. Now, if we have a look now, what we get before we start G, we can add 3 and 6 would give us 9, or 7 and 5 would give us 12. And then we'd put in 12, that's the greater value. 12 and 1, and we get 13. Then we can do our backward scanning. So 13, take away 1 is gives me 12, and then take away 5 gives me 7. So if I go through my dummy 0, 13 minus 0 gives me 13. And 13... well, actually, let's go back. I moved too quick there. So when we're having a look now at this vertex here, okay, we can have 7 minus 4 would give me 3, 12 minus 6 would give me 6, and 13 minus 4 would give me 9, okay? So all those numbers I've just said are giving me the latest start time for the individual activities. And that's going to be important when we do part C. So for now, I'm going to put in the lowest number, and that will be 3. Then I have 3 minus 1 is 2, and 2 minus 2 is 0. Okay, so let's answer part A. Part A just asks me the duration of activity D, which is 5 weeks. It's already written there on the diagram, okay. Part B, what are the immediate predecessors of G? So immediate, I mean right before. I don't mean all the other ones in the network, okay. So we've got D, oops. So we've got D here, and E are my immediate predecessors to G. Okay, now C part 1. We're asked, what is the latest start time of activity E? And this is where you have to be really careful, because the latest start time of activity E is not necessarily this 3 here, okay? We picked the lowest number when we backward scanned through C, E, and F. If we had a box for every one of those activities, which we could do it that way, I haven't actually taught you that way, but you could do it that way, then you would see immediately the latest start time of E. But you can't assume that it's 3. You have to check. So 12 minus 6 gives me 6. So the latest start time of E is actually 6. Again, with question C part 2, you have to be really careful. We haven't put a box. That box here is not just for activity F. If we had a box for activity F, okay, it would have 3 as the early start time, and it would have 13 minus 4 gives me 9 as the latest start time. And so the latest start time of activity F is actually 9, and the float time is actually 9 minus 3 equals 6. Okay, we worked out our critical path early, so we can go through now. So we go through A, B, then up through C, D, and through G. A to B to C to D to G. And our minimum time, this was answered well, was 13 weeks. Now, for Part D, you were asked to explain why it would be a waste of money to reduce the completion time of activity F. So it has a float time. It's not on the critical path. So there's not a lot of point trying to reduce F, okay? Because really, if we go from this point at the end of B all the way to the end and see how long that would take, 4 and 5 and 1 is 10, 6 and 1 is 7, and through here it only takes 4, okay? So that's where that float time comes from. So what you should say in these questions is basically it's not on the critical path, okay? There's no point reducing it. It's not on the critical path. Okay, and Part E. So some people got this. So this is a little bit trickier. So this is looking at crashing. And you've been told the activities you could crash are either C, D, E, or F. Now, for F, we've already said we're not going to look at that. It's not on the critical path, okay? But C and D are. So let's first look at C and D. And if I look at C and D, so it takes me 9 to get through. 4 and 5 is 9. So from here through this bit of the critical path is 9. And to get through E takes me 6. Okay, but I can actually reduce E as well. Let's start by reducing C and D, the maximum they've allowed us. They've told us 2 weeks per activity. So if I reduce C and D, and let's say I make that 2 and I make D 3, so now that's 5. But unfortunately, look, E is 6. So is there any point in reducing both of those by 2? Well, yes, there is, because we're also told that we're allowed to reduce E. Now, you're going to have to ask yourself, well, would I reduce E by 1 or 2 weeks? Well, I've already reduced C and D the maximum amount, and that C and D is going to take me 5 to do. So there's not much point reducing E by more than 1 week. So I'm going to reduce E to 5, okay? So overall, in total, I've reduced those activities by 5 weeks. That's what I'm going to end up paying for, okay? But we still need to work out how is that going to affect the critical path. Now, I appreciate this is going to get a bit messy now, but I'll just put in the critical path, a new critical path, if we reduce those activities. So put in the boxes. So now we have 5. We have 3 and 2 gives us 5. And then 5 and 3 gives us 8. And if we had looked through E, well, 3 and 5 also gives us 8. And then our final activity, G, is 1. So our new minimum time in weeks to complete this is going to be 9 weeks. And I'd already put this 5 week. This was the amount that we reduced the activities, the amount in total. And we were told it would cost us $275 per week that we crashed those activities. Okay.